do call your mom and ask her for advice. And always do your best to remember that no matter what you do in this life,
Thank you.
what matters to me is that you keep doing. And love you always, Mom. Inspire kids to do at 4h.org.
Welcome to Fight for Life, a pro-life radio show discussing the ministry of First Choice Pregnancy Services here in Las Vegas. I'm Deborah, board member and executive director of First Choice Pregnancy Services.
And I'm Jessica, logistics specialist at First Choice Pregnancy Services.
We are ambassadors for the unborn. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, friends. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Deborah, here with Jess, ambassadors on behalf of the babies, here to share insights and real-life stories in the fight for the unborn. We have CeLes in the house today. I'm so excited to have her. She faithfully stands out with the sidewalk counselors and recently crossed the street to become a volunteer with us as well. She does double duty down there on Sahara. We're going to get to her here in a minute after Jess gives you guys the weekly update.
Hello, everyone. This is Jess bringing you that weekly update. From September 8th through September 14th, 2022, the supporters of First Choice Pregnancy Services helped to provide 88 free pregnancy tests and 46 free ultrasounds to the women of the Las Vegas community. Now, many of these women are abortion bound, and some are even under the impression that they've walked into an abortion clinic to have their abortion. So thank you for helping to save babies from death through abortion and for speaking up for the voiceless, as Proverbs 31 says we ought to. If you're listening while we're live and you have a question that you'd like to ask, you can call into our show at 702-650-5588. Speak to our station manager, Alyssa or Sunny, and they will put you directly on the air with us. This broadcast is sponsored by Desert Hills Baptist Church. If sponsoring Fight for Life Radio sounds like something that you or your congregation would also like to do, give us a call. If you missed last week's broadcast, you can watch it on our Facebook page, FCPS Friends. While you're there, like us, follow us, and share. You can also follow us on YouTube at FCPS_Friends and FCPS Friends, and on Instagram and Twitter at FCPS_Friends. If you're watching online, go ahead and interact with us, and we will answer your questions and comments as they come in. Back to you, Deb.
Well, as I said today, we have CeLes here.
I think it's pronounced CeLes.
It is.
CeLes. Oh, sorry. I've always said CeLes.
That is just fine.
I guess I'd have never paid attention to it in writing. She's been out there. How many months have you been standing out there?
Actually, since the baby memorial. So since May.
Oh, since May. Okay. I know I've seen her for like the last 2-3 months. I didn't know how long. So that's about right. She stands out there with Carl and Carolyn. Drew had been standing out there, and we just got told today that Drew's house sold and he left. So they could really use some more backup folk down there if you have the time and desire to stand for the unborn and to stand with some good salt of the earth solid folk.
Some
Come
prayer
on
warriors.
down to 860 East Sahara and join these folk. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came down the street to be involved.
Well, I'm actually an emergency room department nurse here in the Vegas Valley. And I've always known about First Choice, along with other pregnancy centers here in the Valley. And actually, it was the baby memorial when I got the flyer in my mail. My girlfriend and I were saying, you know what, let's go down there and be a part of this. I think it's really important. So we went down there, and God had always put a huge impression on my heart just to be a part of a pregnancy center and alongside a street ministry outside of just being able to be on the streets ministering to people going in and out of abortion clinics. So when Carl got up, God just spoke straight to my heart, and I knew this was a window of opportunity with that street ministry along with being at First Choice. So sure enough, I wrote my number down, and I got a wonderful message from Carolyn a couple days later, and then I was able to come down and be a part with them on the street, and then start getting in to volunteer with you guys. First Choice.
That's a special calling when God gives you that desire to do both. Because that work outside is hard.
It's tough.
It's hot. It's sometimes discouraging just to watch the continuous death roll past you while you're standing out there.
I was talking to Carl this morning, and I said about how many cars have gone down to the abortion clinic already this morning. By then it was before 10 o'clock in the morning. And he says, I just can't even count. And I said, well, if you were to estimate, what do you think it is? And he said, probably at least a dozen already. And it wasn't even 10 o'clock in the morning yet. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
so what do you do now that you've crossed over into First Choice and volunteering in First Choice as well? What are you doing at First Choice to volunteer?
So right now, I've spoken to Robin, the director of ultrasound, and coming from a nursing background, that would be my next step with the volunteering is getting certified with my ultrasound technician and being ultrasound these women who are coming in, and that in itself is a ministry because you have these women on the table getting their abdominal ultrasounds, and you're able to speak life into them and into the child in their womb.
Yeah.
So
I first met CeLes on Saturday at an appreciation team event that we were having.
Oh, that's the first time?
That was the first time I'd met her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So thanks
So
for
there were
inviting
people
me.
there that I didn't know either.
Gem.
Anyhow, but I had the privilege of sitting nearby CeLes, and we got engaged in this very interesting conversation. And I said, and she told me, she shared that she's an emergency room nurse, and the curiosity got the best of me. I said, all right, how many abortion injuries have you seen in the emergency room as an emergency room nurse, say, per week? And can you share what your response was?
So on average, as a staff nurse, you would work 3 12-hour shifts. So that leaves an additional 4 days rest of the week. On average, you have between 15 to 20 nurses in a typical big ER. So just on my shifts alone, throughout the few days that I work in the week, I would see maybe 1 to 2 women coming in, actually announcing and disclosing that they did take abortion or oral pills, and they're having whatever symptoms. Now, this doesn't say exactly, the statistics are skewed because, what these abortionists do is they tell the patient, you don't have to disclose that you had an abortion, that this is going to be considered a miscarriage, and that you would be having some vaginal bleeding. So you really look at it and you're thinking, this is just only a couple girls that have told me.
Sure.
Actually they were forthcoming
Sure.
in telling me that this is what happened. So how many women go undisclosed?
Right.
And so you look at the statistics, but that is not disclosing everything.
Sure. That's just the people that are bold enough to tell you what's
Right.
actually going on, or maybe just careless enough. Maybe they just don't even care
Right.
what they're doing. So
Or they just don't have a filter in order to
Right.
think they're
Yeah.
like, something's wrong. I probably need to tell them really what's happening.
Right, exactly.
But that the abortionists are cunning enough to tell the women, their patients, that, the hospitals aren't going to understand, or they'll be judgmental
Right.
of you.
Well,
So
let's-
don't tell them that you had an abortion, because you should just come back to us. We
Yeah,
can
but
treat
you see, even with the abortionist across the street from us, the medical system, the hospital's in bed with the guy. The guy's sitting here leading the busiest late-term abortion clinic in our state. And probably about a year ago, he was promoted to the chief of OB care. He oversees OB care at UMC Hospital. So when you sit here and you look at the whole medical profession as a whole, I mean, can you not think of a doctor in a city here, a state with 3 million people, that isn't better qualified to head UMC than the head abortionist here in our city? Like, come on. And I think this is just kind of reflective of our time and the decay, as you see, even with all the COVID stuff, the freedoms and liberties that people once had to talk about stuff, they don't have that ability. And so it's kind of going along to get along. And in the medical, it's my perspective from an outsider, field of, how many of these abortionists are getting any pushback for telling their people, don't be forthright with the emergency room when you go in? Probably none of them.
And as a result, these women are suffering. They're having major abortion injuries. And kind of that's what I wanted to talk about with CeLes today is what are some of these abortion injuries? Because when a woman or anyone is having some kind of medical procedure, they have the right to informed consent. And they're not always being informed when they provide their consent to have an abortion. They don't know. They're ignorant of a lot of the injuries, consequences, short-term and long-term. Can you just speak into some of the injuries that you have personally even seen yourself?
One in particular I will never forget is when I had a woman come in, probably in her 20s, not from here. She had come to seek abortion in the state of Nevada, and I think we're having a worsening of that problem currently. But she had come in. She was to the listeners, I want to use discretion with the descriptive words that I use. But she was having severe symptoms of hemorrhaging, uncontrollable vomiting. The list goes on. And so pain medication was not touching her.
Sure.
It was at that point I had to get her ready for an exam for the provider to do a vaginal exam. And the provider had noticed that the baby had not passed, and this is what was causing all of the symptoms and all of the severe symptoms that she was having, the detrimental symptoms. So it was, and she was all alone. She didn't have anybody here. And so I got her ready, and the provider just said, okay, just hook up the suction. And so it was at that point where I was asking God, why me? Why do I have to be the one that's standing here holding her hand, witnessing this? So it was in that moment, God really revealed a lot and what I'm actually called for.
So was there just baby parts left?
There was.
So the baby had died.
Yeah.
But her
because
body
it
hadn't passed.
Correct.
Oh, was it like
the
an
remains.
APR or an abortion pill?
Yeah. And and I looked on. She was one that she brought the medication in. I was able to see which abortion clinic had provided it, and so and I remember having the baby and in a specimen cup, and here this is a child, an image bearer. And so it was such a surreal moment, and I just stood there as I was walking it, as we have to walk it down to pathology, and I will just never forget those moments of just praying over that child and praying over the mom of that child, just asking for God to intervene in her life and for me to be a witness to her in some way.
Conscious?
She was, but she was inconsolable.
Yeah.
Due to her pain, due to all of her symptoms that were going on. We finally were able to get her into a point of stableness, but it was a really traumatic thing.
Once she was stable, did she express any form of regret, or where was she at mentally at that point?
I think when I was sitting down, because I was just asking for God for an opportunity to speak to her, to see what was going on, and English was not her first language, and she spoke some broken English, and so I was trying, with the Lord to try to ask her, and you could tell that there was shame and guilt.
Sure.
And I actually told her that you don't have to do this in the future. And then I realized she had communicated to me that was not her first time. But I began to tell her that there's other options. You don't have to, kill your child.
Repeat.
Right.
So, yeah.
There's other resources out there. Wow.
How long have you been a nurse?
For a little over 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So not very long, considering a lot of nurses have been out in the field for such a long time.
Yeah, I can't imagine the stuff you see and deal with. I can't handle blood, so 5 years is a long time.
Well, it's a calling. That was something I had to come to grips with, because when I first got into it, it rocked my world, from everything from my coworkers to who I was seeing as coming as patients, and then in those beginning moments, God said, "This is your calling. This may not be necessarily what you want, but this is my calling on your life." So this is where.
So
He
from
has
your
me.
time that you volunteered at First Choice, I know you've done some chaperoning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a favorite story from back there so far?
What
is it?
So, actually, it was. I don't know if I can name names.
No.
No.
Okay.
name.
So,
Well, if it's our staff, you can.
it is.
Yeah, that's
It
fine.
is.
Oh,
Just
okay.
not,
so-
just
yeah,
not client.
yeah.
As long as it's
Yeah.
not client
Yeah.
patient
No, this
information.
is Nancy.
Okay.
Nancy's
Okay.
ultrasound. Yeah. So there was a woman had come in, again, early 20s. I will never forget. She came in, and you could just see the look of just. She's lived a rough life. She looked like there was hopelessness, just complete and utter, just depression, everything that you can think of, you saw on this girl's face. And so my heart just went kaplunk, and I just wanted to go up to her and hug her. But she came in, and she got on the table, and she was expressing to us, she was abortion minded at the time, and I know the counselors really worked well with her too, just counseling her in a way, because she had said, I was really abortion minded, but now I'm really reconsidering. And so of course we're emphasizing that. And she had said that the relationship that she's in now, the father of the baby, is not, if he is involved at all, it was a very rough relationship. And she just said she has a little one at home, a little boy at home, and the circumstances are just really, really hard for her. So while she was telling us the story, Nancy had taken a really wonderful, beautiful ultrasound pictures. I mean, detailed. And Nancy is really wonderful at what she does. And so then we were just drawn to the screen on the screen that the ultrasound was on, and just seeing her baby.
Do you remember how big the baby was? How many months was it?
The baby was, I think like 13,
Good.
14
You
weeks.
had good images.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. You could just see this, just the little,
Face.
the face, everything. And
Profile.
yeah. And so while Nancy was doing that, tears start rolling down her face, and I just leaned over to her and I said, God is going to have you be a wonderful mama to this little baby. And so then she starts crying, and then I start getting teary-eyed, and then it just was a beautiful moment. And then afterwards she said, there's no way I'm going to keep this baby, because how could you not? And that's what she was expressing. So it was just, and you could just see the hope in her. You could just see just a whole new light in her. So it was beautiful.
It's absolutely miraculous, the work that's done with those ultrasound
It
machines.
is.
And Nancy, she is good at her job. She's been doing some of those 3D images lately, so you're getting
That's what she
all the
did.
dimensional angles of those babies that are super cute.
Well, that brings us to our story segment. You want to share the story, Deb?
Well, I was going to say,
Oh.
you could share it, or we'll take the story she just had, because I
okay.
didn't jot one down, but I know you have all of them today.
Oh, well, there's several stories that we have. I'm not sure if you wanted to tap into the politics of what's going on.
Oh, my politics. Where do we start?
We have 6 minutes.
Well, I guess I would like to challenge and encourage folk out there who are voting,
Yeah.
or maybe you're not considering voting, to reconsider voting and to get active in your support of the unborn. I have had several conversations with several pastors lately. I've been to a couple political events here in the last week, one with Adam Laxalt last week, who's running for United States Senator, and another one today with Sheriff Joe Lombardo. And I know everybody has their opinions on politics. I definitely have mine. There's people that might not be the primary choice that you're thrilled to get behind and support. But I was thinking about it this morning. I often think of those babies in ultrasound images. And I thought, that baby and that ultrasound image, if it had a voice and a choice in deciding who to vote for, who is the most likely to advocate for its life?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a values voter. Pro-life has always been my primary issue that I vote on. And so last night, actually, we were at church, Jessica and I, and our pastor's wife came up to me and said, "Did you see Twitter?" And I said, "Dear Lord, I have not." What are you going to tell me? And she told me about an article that had been written about our church, Liberty Baptist Church. And they were going after the event that was being held there this morning with Sheriff Lombardo, who's running for governor. And it mentioned Matthew Tice, who is a pastor at our church, and he's also on the board of First Choice Pregnancy Services. And it kind of took after First Choice a little bit for being a anti-abortion center, and that we don't support abortion even in cases of rape. And so I think God's people need to pay attention. The lines have been clearly drawn this election. There's really that's very clear. You're either going to vote for godliness, life, and freedom, or you're going to vote for evil. Bottom line, you're going to support the taking of innocent life. You're going to support law enforcement violating people across the board. I am a huge advocate of supporting law enforcement, as I am a law enforcement wife. But what I'm watching lately is terrifying to watch on the news, to see where law enforcement is going and what they're doing. And so I just would encourage people to reconsider maybe sitting out and consider being that baby in the womb whose mother is actively seeking to violently murder him or her. And place yourself in that position and ask, if I was that baby in imminent danger, who would I vote for? And use that as a guiding tool. It's moved me to vote for different people I don't necessarily want to vote for, but it's important that we're choosing people who are going to be the best advocate for this. I was actually in Winco the other day, and there was a lady behind me in line, and there was a magazine on the front counter right there, and it had a very unflattering photo of Joe Biden. And I was shocked because I haven't seen very many unflattering photos of him on anything. And I picked it up and I looked at it, put it down, and this elderly lady came up behind me and picked it up, and it was really interesting. And she was late 70s, 80ish, and she made a comment, and I said something about, that's the first time I've seen a photo like that of him on a cover. And she said, "Oh, he's so much better than the last guy. I'm a Republican, but that last guy was terrible." And she kind of went on its thing, and I said, "Ma'am, that's pretty much most politicians." And she's like, "That's true." And I made a comment about how my grocery bills doubled and how I supported the last administration because I'm a values voter, and they succeeded in reversing abortion, the Roe versus Wade. And she said, "That is none of anybody's business. Nobody should be voting on that. I had an abortion." Long story short, she had an abortion before abortion was even legalized. But those folk are very ingrained in their support of that. And that needs to be exposed, and people really need to reevaluate why they're voting.
And we need to remember that just because Roe versus Wade was overturned, it kicked the fight to your local establishment. And it's time for us to stand up as a people and get out there and vote pro-life, anti-abortion.
And really educate yourself as to what abortion is. Look at some of these pictures of these babies that were murdered in Washington, D.C. in March, and what they faced. Maybe that will give you a little more sense of urgency on their behalf, because I know it has me, and it makes me super upset when I look at that stuff.
If you want to come help us celebrate life, join us at our November 10th Champions for Life banquet, our 18th annual. We'll have keynote speaker Rachel Campos Duffy joining us. Make sure you can get your tickets and your tables at fcpsfriends.org. Thank you for joining us here today.
And there's the 40 Days for Life kickoff, the 25th of September at 2 o'clock outside First Choice. That is it for us today. We ran out of time. Thanks for joining us today,
All right,
CeLes.
thank you for having me.
Have
CeLes,
a great
it was an honor.
weekend. God bless you all. And Lord willing, we'll be back here next week with Pastors Scott and Kim. God bless you
Amen.
guys.
God bless. Thanks for joining your ambassadors for the unborn on the Fight for Life radio today and every Thursday on KKVV 1060 AM, the best news radio, the gospel airship.
If you'd like to support the cause of saving unborn babies, or if you have a question you'd like us to answer on the air, go to fcpsfriends.org or call us at 702-294-CARE. Again, that number is 702-294-2273.
On behalf of his little ones, thank you and God bless.